Good morning. How you doing, Robertson County? I'm back. This is 1100 WSG. I'm U-Turn LaVern. And yes, this is one street over, and we're just so happy to be here. Thank you for joining us this morning here on 1100 WSG. And joining me in studio, what a great way to welcome me back is to have Senator Kerry Roberts in the house with me. Hello, sir. How are you doing?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Back.
Thank you very
Glad
much.
to welcome you back.
Thank you.
Where'd you go?
Nowhere. We stayed home. We went. No, well, I mean, now I say we went nowhere, but we were in Alabama, for a while, in Mount Juliet.
Well, that counts.
Yeah, I guess. We spent,
except for Mount Juliet.
But it's an hour away.
What was that?
My grandkids. Three of my grandchildren are there.
That's a very good reason to go to Mount Juliet.
Absolutely, we're in Mount Juliet all the time because that's where they play ball and all that kind of thing. So if I want to see my grandbabies, my three that are, that one
How
of my
old
twins. I've got a 7-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1.5-year-old. So the 3-year-old is going to be 4 in May.
Wow.
And the 7-year-old will be 8 in July, and then the 1.5-year-old will be 2 in July.
Okay, so do you enjoy that more at this time around than you did when your own were that age?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
I don't think I was good with little kids, so when the day comes, I hope I'm a better I'm a better grandpa than I was a dad.
And I have a 4-month-old in Jackson. I have a 4-month-old, so I have 4. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that you're at a different place in life,
right?
And so you can enjoy
a little bit more mellow.
Yeah, because I mean, my life was insane.
Not as uptight.
You figure I had my twins on the Dad Blame radio. I mean, we were on the air with Les Jamison 30 minutes before one of them got here, and all of my pregnancies were broadcast stunts. Okay, I mean, and so that the insanity of it all. And they went with me everywhere. I would go to remotes, and I can remember changing the twins' diapers on a Pepsi display. And I kind of quit doing.
There's a reason I don't like Pepsi. I didn't realize that's what it was. So.
It wasn't a messy diaper, but anyway, no. But it's so funny. I got once the twins were born, though. I can remember so clearly. I did remotes, man. I was the girl that went and did all the remotes and all the parties and all that kind of thing. Because they paid us very well to do that.
Yeah.
And but after the twins were born, and we were roofing contractors, and so I remember going to an event for the YMCA camp or something, and they wanted me to speak to the kids, and they bring the twins, and the twins were just wild because they were like 2. And I thought, I got to quit doing so many remotes, and I quit. I quit public speaking. I just I was just like, I can't do remotes anymore. And, had the other, because I had the twins were 3.5 when the third one was born and 4.5 when the fourth one was born. So it was crazy town. And I only took off 2 weeks with each pregnancy.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm enjoying my grandkids a lot more.
But at that time, were you going into the studio or were you working at home?
No, I was working at house.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to quit whenever I had the twins and basically just do the bookkeeping for the roofing company. I was like, okay, I'm done with the radio. I'm going to just, help Mark with the business. And a good thing we didn't because we kept our benefits and all that. It just really worked out really well. But my boss at the time, he says, I can set this up where you can do it at home. And I'm like, really?
Why didn't you tell me that sooner?
Yeah, exactly. And so they set that up and I started working from home when the twins were born. And working out of the home studio. Yep.
All right. So people can't really see.
I'm supposed to interview you, not vice versa.
But you're sitting in front of all this stuff. So what did it look like at home?
Home, that's back when we used to do loop lines through AT&T was my best friend. That's one of the hardest things whenever I got such terrible internet service from them recently,
Well, they did phone well, but
they took good care of me. Yeah. And I mean, if my lines went down, they were there. And we did it's a studio loop line, and the engineers set that up. I can't begin to tell you how it works, but it was through the phone company, and we broadcast down a phone line. It was the same way we would do a remote. We would go to a remote and broadcast through a phone line.
Yeah.
And so it was the same concept, but I had a little board kind of like the size of this one. I had a computer, a desktop that very quickly after it wasn't long after I started working up here in Springfield that we started getting access to T-Dot cameras to where I could watch the cameras and things like that. I can't remember the timeline on that, but before that, I was best friends. I still have friends that were dispatchers back in that time. And I would call them. Because I would listen to, I had an antenna on my house that would pick up scanners from Nashville.
Wow.
And I would listen to the police scanner, and I had to get it programmed at the radio room up in Nashville. It was special. And so we had that, and then I would go, and I would call dispatch. We were good friends, and I would take them T-shirts and concert tickets and pizza and all kinds of fun stuff. And so, to get them, to bribe them. Okay. So that way we could make sure
one more question.
Okay, and then we got to talk to you because you're, the interesting one today.
Well, I don't know about that, but I don't really remember what I remember is U-Turn LaVern.
Yeah.
Did you have any competition? Because I can't sit here and tell you anyone who did traffic when you did traffic. I only knew you.
Traffic Jim was out there. He's the reason why I had a nickname.
Who was traffic? Who was
Traffic
he with?
Jim Fuqua. He was at KDF.
Oh, well, I didn't listen to KDF.
Yeah, he was KDF. Yeah. And, of course, Richard Thomas. I forgot about him. Yeah, Richard Thomas, but he didn't have a catchy nickname.
And I didn't listen to, he was was he
WSM always, and he also did television at one point. Those were.
So if you're into album rock or you were in the country, then you knew the other two people. But I guess I just listened to the station.
There were others, and but again, they don't really jump out at me because of that nickname.
But even today, your name and your voice, because we've said this before. Even today, people will hear you and.
Yeah. They're like, I recognize that voice. I had that happen to me. It was so funny because I'm taking a Teach Now class. It's called Teach Now down in Rutherford County. It's my teaching license class, right? Mm-hmm. And I've never said a word about, they go around to tell us something unique about you, and I don't do that. So so I said something about, I had twins that were 7'11" and 7'5" at birth, and they're like, oh. So, that's my unique thing. And so I never said anything. And so people have kind of figured it out. And I had somebody come up to me the other day, and she goes, I kept listening to your voice and was trying to figure out why you sounded so familiar. And she'd finally figured it out. So,
how tall are all your boys?
Oh, geez, Pete. See, Senator Kerry Robertson's in the house.
But here's my point. Something unique. Jeez. You could say all your kids are over 6 something.
Oh, yeah.
How tall are they?
The twins are the smallest, and they're 6'3".
6'3".
And then the middle one's 6'7", and then the youngest is 6'9".
So you could say, I've got 4 boys and they're all 6'3" and taller.
And I'm the petite one in the family, and I was 6'1". I've shrunk, but I'm the petite one in the family.
Say I'm the shortest person in my family.
I am.
Yeah. How tall's Mark?
He was 6'8", but because of all the hip replacements, he is dead. I think he's 6'7" or 6'6".
Settled.
We both have had hip replacements, and it will cost you some height sometime. And he had a traumatic hip replacement that collapsed and was crippled for a year. People don't know that about him. He's a rock star. And Dr. Hodrick is the one who put him back together up at Southern Joint Replacement. So if you want to know the one who crippled him, talk to me off mic, and I'll talk to you about it.
So you're listening to the Kerry Roberts Show, and my interview with U-Turn LaVern has now come to an end. So now we'll turn it over to One Street Over. Here we go.
All right, here we go. Senator Kerry Roberts.
Do you need to play the bumper music again?
Yeah, kind of, because I was going to say we're like already,
I miss
11
doing
minutes
the Kerry Roberts show.
Well, see, and people don't realize you're the reason why I'm doing this. Really?
No. You're the reason you're doing it because you were in radio long before I was.
Well, but you were the one who suggested to Neil. Well, Neil had asked me before to do a show, and I just didn't have any free time. And what was the guy's name that left? Was it Dick something?
Yes, Dick Veach. I'm sorry, you've asked me. It's too early to ask me questions like that, but
he had done the 7 to 8 show for years, and when he left and moved back to Chicago, that was the 1 hour of the day I was free. And so, because I was working at the church whenever he came to me last time, and I was like, well, I could actually do that. So that's what got this started. But you had opened the door to it, and all the congressional campaign, all of that. Opened the doors to this. That's one of the things I try to figure out why in the world I ran for Congress. Okay. I'm just like, what? I number one, I think I had to get it out of my system because it's something I'd had in my mind I would do, and I'll never do it again. Not unless God makes me, drop some, I don't know, it'd be a lot to get me to run for political office again. But it opened these doors. It opened the door to me teaching. It opened the door to Mark teaching, and we're in the place we need to be. I don't have any doubt about that. So.
Well, now that you're interviewing me, I'll tell you my favorite thing about the Kerry Roberts Show. You want to know what it was?
Yes. What was it?
It was when the show was over. Neil would get here sometime during the show,
right?
And he would walk into the studio, and we would just sit and talk.
Yeah.
I love that guy, and I miss that, and I should do a better job. We've just been so busy with our project at home that I just feel like I'm not keeping up with people like I need to, and it's not just them. I'm not keeping up with. I need to call my mom for crying out loud. I was thinking the other day, when did I call my mom last? And I'm just not doing a good job of keeping up, but. That was just something that I enjoyed so much. He would sit there. I can picture him right now sitting there with a Diet Coke because he loved to drink Diet Coke, and we'd just sit there and talk about anything. And Neil is such an intelligent and well-rounded individual. You could just talk to him about anything, whether it's politics, radio, technology,
right,
and. Just a lot of great memories. That was probably, in hindsight, looking back now, that's my favorite thing about the show.
That's cool.
My least favorite thing were the trolls who would try to take something I said and turn it into like a campaign ad, and now at this point I just kind of laugh at it because I realized I'd get upset about something someone would say, and then I began to realize that the more ridiculous they got, the more people would come to my defense, if that makes sense. And so it actually worked in my favor.
Well, and that's one thing. People sometimes wonder why we're so careful with what we talk about. That is the reason. I worked for Glenn Beck long enough to know how people take you out of context. And for those of you who don't know, I worked for the place for almost 2 years. And he's a dear friend. And we've lost touch since I worked for him. That's a whole another weird story. But nonetheless, really respect the heck out of him, and there's no one that's been taken more out of context than Glenn Beck. Yeah. And anybody in a political position, I'm very mindful of that, of our local people, our local politicians. I'm super careful about what I talk to y'all about, because this is recorded. And somebody could take your words completely out of context. Well, he said so-and-so. Well, you didn't hear the whole context of it, and could really cause problems for you. And so I'm super mindful and careful about that. And I think people in the media just aren't, and shame on you.
Can I read you an email I got, and then I'll tell you what I believe it's in response to?
Okay.
Ready? Okay. So in the about line of the email, it says, "The evident truth about you. Ugh. You are an ignorant, homophobic, transphobic, religious extremist hate monger on the wrong side of history, and an enemy of the free world who will burn on the ash heap of history. You should be deported to the Middle East, where you can be among those who share your perverse, backward, barbaric, religious extremist beliefs. You have no place in the civilized, liberal democracies of the free world." Well, there are a lot of problems with that, starting with their obvious hatred of people in the Middle East, and the fact they don't understand we live in a republic, not a democracy. But you know what led to all that?
What?
Okay. So the state of Tennessee, we discovered. So in my role as chairman of government operations.
Right.
Here is the answer to, in the explanation of this, you're going to get the answer to when people say, well, I didn't see you at this barbecue or that chamber luncheon or whatever. That's because I've got 274 entities of Tennessee state government that I have to keep up with as chairman of the Government Operations Committee. So when I agree to be chairman of the Government Operations Committee, I basically agree to be chairman of the board of 274 state entities. One of those,
$30,000 a year,
$28,000 a year, and one of those is the Tennessee Department of Corrections. Okay. Now, if you pay any attention to the news at all, you know that TDOC, as we call it, is always problematic. But part of the reason it's problematic is because corrections is a problematic subject. We send bad people to jail for doing bad things, and there's a lot of people at that point that really don't care about them or don't care what goes on in the world of corrections. But nonetheless, we do have to care, because we've got responsibilities to, well, as the Governor Lee points out, 95% of these people are going to be back living, working, among us. So while we have them as guests in our facilities, maybe, just maybe, we can teach them some skills, life skills, personal development, things like that. And maybe they'll, when they're one of those 95% who get out, maybe they won't reoffend. Okay? Anyway,
We call it recidivism.
Yeah, recidivism, and it's a big issue. But anyway, so here we are, reviewing TDOC policies, and what we discover is there are 89 inmates who are receiving hormone therapy. Okay? So the transgender, situation has hit Tennessee Department of Corrections. And so you would think that, for the vast majority of people, so right now, if you're listening and you go, well, yeah, of course they should get it, then you need to understand that you're like, no kidding, in an honest poll, you're like less than 5% of all Tennesseans in an honest poll. That's what kind of outlier you are. If you think that the state of Tennessee should be paying for hormone therapy replacement because somebody's unhappy with their gender, then, by the way, you should also think that I should get rhinoplasty because I'm unhappy with my nose, or somebody else should get, a boob job because they're unhappy with. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where do you?
I'm stunned.
Okay,
I can't
no pun
believe
intended,
it.
but
I'm just
where do you cut it off? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
You have to just stop at some place.
Right.
So, if you believe that inmates in Tennessee Department of Corrections should be receiving gender hormone therapy, you are in the minority of the minority. I mean, you're in a really, really small percentage of people. Overwhelmingly, people push back on this and say, well, wait a minute. Regardless of how I feel about gender ideology, the taxpayers of Tennessee ought not to be paying for that. Okay, well, it gets worse. According to the policy, or it was a position of Tennessee Department of Correction, because somebody mistakenly said that this is covered under the American with Disabilities Act. Their position was, if somebody stepped forward and said, I would like to have sex reassignment surgery. By the way, notice that I did not say gender affirming care. That's a misnomer. Wouldn't it make sense if someone's struggling with their gender identity? Wouldn't it make sense to have as a first step counseling?
Thank you. Yeah.
Why can't we do that first?
Yeah.
Why can't we do that before we do something that has life-altering, permanent consequences that frequently leads to suicide? So that what gets thrown in our faces all the time, if we don't do this, kids are going to kill themselves. But what's ignored is that many of the people who do ultimately take their own lives. I have two people in my life who I have firsthand experience with this, and one I worry about, and the other already took his life. And for people to call, this is the biggest mislabeling you could ever have. Gender affirming care is when you get in front of a counselor and you say, you know what, it's a whole lot easier to align your thinking with your body than it is to change your body and still have those underlying problems that lead to this discontent in the first place. Romans 12:2 says what? Pray to God that he will change the way you think. Mm-hmm. And that's whether any number of situations where we can't change our situation. If we can change our attitude, it has a great outcome. But if you take someone that's already struggling mentally and don't help them resolve that, no number of operations are gonna make them magically feel better. Anyway, so I'm kind of off on a tangent. The policy question here is, should the taxpayers of Tennessee pay for gender, hormone therapy, or should they pay for sex reassignment therapy? I simply filed a bill that said the state of Tennessee is not going to pay for sex reassignment surgery, and we're not going to sign up any new people for hormone therapy. And that's what led to
that
this email.
that email.
Yeah. Now I'm going to tell you something that I have not, whether Republican or Democrat, I have not run into anyone who disagreed with this bill. Now, their vote, the Democrats will vote against it because they're terrified of the transgender mafia. I mean, that group of people has so inserted themselves into the Democrat Party that they won't dare. I mean, and that we see that all the time. I mean, people accuse Republicans of it, but it's more likely to happen on the Democrat side of the aisle where they'll vote for crazy stuff because they don't want to offend somebody in their coalition.
Deal with the backlash.
And at some point in time, you know what? They're really not doing themselves any kind of service. They ought to tell some of the crazy people you're crazy, but they won't do it. They just give in to them. And the Republicans need to be the same way. If we have crazy people in our party, somebody needs to tell them they're crazy.
Yeah. And you got people that are full of conspiracy nonsense and all
that.
You need to say,
tell you,
stop
okay,
it.
I'm sorry. Here's another example. The clickbait said that Tennessee Senate votes to ban chemtrails. Okay, first of all, I'm just going to tell you, and if you think chemtrails are a thing, I just think that's terribly stupid. I mean, if you're watching jets overhead and you see white plumes behind them, and you think that that's American Airlines spraying chemicals to make us all gay or whatever you think it is, I'm telling you, you don't understand basic physics on the fact that those jet engines are fueled by kerosene. They call it Jet A. And when you're that far in the atmosphere and you burn it, guess what? There's vapor. That's it. It's vapor. That's all there is to it. There's no super secret group of people flying jets. You can track every jet in the sky on multiple websites. And you can see, oh, that jet right there above me, if you know where your coordinates are, well, that's a FedEx jet that took off from Memphis and it's flying to Charlotte, North Carolina. And, and that's the way you can do that. So I literally was at the Republican women's luncheon last week and I had somebody ask me about chemtrails and I thought it was a joke. And when I realized it was serious, I just wanted, my heart broke.
Did you want to say bless your heart?
Yeah, bless your heart. Okay, so anyway, so the clickbait headline says that Tennessee Senate has voted to outlaw chemtrails. Do you know what we voted to do? We did not vote to outlaw chemtrails. Chemtrails was not in the bill. Chemtrails was not part of the discussion. If it was, I didn't hear it. But if it was, I would have stood up and said, y'all stop being crazy. What it is, there are people, if you look at various climate, what do we call it now? It's no longer global warming. What is it? Climate change. Okay. So there are people who are pitching this experiment that they would disperse things in the atmosphere that would block sunlight, thereby achieving the United Nations goal of cooling the planet by, or stopping whatever, they think it would happen. And let me ask you a question. Do you really want the United Nations to try to do something like this?
Lord, no.
Because a handful of crazy people don't understand history, and they,
Do you want somebody spraying something into the atmosphere?
I don't want them spraying anything into the atmosphere anyway. Yeah. But I just say clearly, the sad thing about this is it's a shame. This is the disservice of what ideologues in Washington have done. You can only get money to study this stuff if you agree with their position. But thankfully, when you go to Tennessee Tech or you go to University of Tennessee or even Vanderbilt University, you get people who say, y'all take a deep breath. If we look at millennia upon millennia upon millennia, and we look at, what we know about whatever the scientific techniques are, we know that the earth ebbs and flows. Mm-hmm. The earth goes up, the earth goes down. And guess what? Whatever contribution man makes to that is probably negligible at most. Now, quickly, I would add, but let's be good stewards of the environment.
Amen.
I'm walking along the highway, picking up trash. What's wrong with you people dumping your trash out, Throwing, you know what I mostly pick up? Beer cans and vodka bottles.
Say that one more time.
Beer cans and vodka bottles. That's the vast majority of what I'm picking up. So we have about half mile of road frontage.
Yeah.
And I'm picking up trash there, and it's beer cans and vodka bottles.
Yeah.
And Crystal. And McDonald's. And now, sad to say, Chick-fil-A. So I'm now starting to see. Yeah, I mean, so why do people throw their trash out? Why do they do that? So I'm all in favor of clean water, clean air, clean whatever. But let's not. Anyway, so the point of the bill was to say, none of that can originate in Tennessee. You can't do that in Tennessee. And is it necessary? And could Tennessee stop it? I mean, probably not, but it's just what was important to the legislator, and there you go, it passed. And so, but what does the clickbait say? They make it about chemtrails, and trying to portray, the Tennessee Senate as Looney Tunes, and had nothing to do with it whatsoever.
But again, that's them taking the talking, taking things out of context.
It's stuff that happens all the time. Okay, I know you got to take a break.
I do. I've got 3 breaks we got to do.
We'll talk about another hot button issue.
Okay, and we're going to talk for a moment about Cumberland Connect. I had a little ad that was running early on as we were sitting down, because they were talking about the app that you can get for anything to do with Cumberland Electric, Cumberland Connect. If you're a Cumberland Electric customer, you can get the app now. You can watch everything that's going on with your service. And if you're a Cumberland Electric customer, guys, guess what? You get Cumberland Connect. Now, they may not be to your area just yet, because it's not just Robertson County. It's some, I know I've got some friends in Sumner County. They're like, hey, we're waiting for it too, because they're Cumberland Electric customers. And man, once you get it, as Kerry and I were talking about, I had a lot of trouble with my connections with AT&T. They were not serving us well. We were paying $65 a month. We had 3.5 upload speeds. Now I'm in the 500 and 600s. This is amazing. And I'm about a year into having Cumberland Connect, and it was a big game changer for us. So if you want to know where they are on the list, when are they going to come knocking on your door, you can go to their website, cumberlandconnect.org, cumberlandconnect.org, or you can give them a call, 800-987-2362, 800-987-2362. Give them your address, and they'll tell you, say, hey, we're already there, or we're going to be there at this time. It is amazing. They have got packages starting at just $30 per month. And guess what? If you're somebody that's struggling financially and it's like, I've got a gig, it's $80, and you're like, man, that's a lot of money. Well, you can apply. And if you're one of the qualifying households, you could get credit of up to $30 per month for broadband services. And they've got packages starting at just $30 per month. Great service, great folks to talk to. I really love working with Cumberland Connect. So thankful that they're one of our sponsors here at One Street Over. So when you get in touch with them, please always let them know, guys, that U-Turn sent you. And as we get back into it now, I want to continue talking with Kerry Roberts. I got this because I know that you follow Bobby Davis. I know he mentioned this weekend in his service. Did you hear his service this weekend?
Yes, it was so good.
He was talking about Dr. Phil.
Yes.
And I have you read that book?
No.
It's called We've Got Issues, How You Can Stand Strong for America's Soul and Sanity. Dr. Phil, if you do not realize, gave up his show and moved to Texas. He's a Christian, and he's like, man, we got problems.
See, I didn't know any of this until
Bobby mentioned it. So I'm going to get the book, and I'm going to listen to it. But the thing is, my husband made this comment. He said, well, why didn't he keep his show? Because he could have made a difference. No, he can't. Again, going back to working for Glenn, when Glenn was working for CNN and even Fox.
You get censored.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, the things, you think that these conservative people can do whatever they want on these shows. Oh, no, they can't. Oh, no, they can't. And their hands are tied in many regards, and I can almost guarantee you, Dr. Phil was one. I'm not saying that. Well, if you want your sponsors, you're going to have to, and he walked away from it. Now, granted, I think he's probably financially set for the rest of his life. I don't think he has any concern.
Well, somebody somewhere will sue him and try and take it all away, right? So just like Trump.
Really. And two, he can now, because you can broadcast from anywhere, he can start his own online thing and maybe be bigger than what he was. Because I don't know about y'all, but I've turned off television. I've turned off so much of it. And I can't say I've completely checked out of it. I've got a few shows I like to watch, but I find out how to get them through Hulu or, whatever. And I watch them, and then I turn off Hulu until something else comes back on. I just don't. I don't watch anything anymore.
I'm trying to read books instead. No,
yeah, I listen to podcasts.
I'm trying to get away from electronic and do something that requires me to
pick up a book.
And
That's good.
have time. Well, we'll see how it works. But Bobby had so many things that were so good.
We're talking about Bobby Davis, Life Church,
Cookville. Got to listen to him.
Amazing guy.
And so,
so good.
This was really, there are two things that, well, more than two things, but two things that I'm going to share. First of all, he said, "What's Satan's favorite color?" And that's kind of funny because everybody says red, right? You know, and but he said gray. And how do you get gray? You mix black and white.
Oh, it's so good.
And that was so true. And he was talking about, Satan's greatest technique is to separate God from his word. Mm-hmm. And I'd never thought of it that way before, ever. separating God from his word is one of Satan's great techniques. And he was talking about all the way back in the garden. That's what Satan tried to do. Tried to separate God from his word. That's what they tried to do in Jesus' time, separate God from his word. And so he was making the point that there are people today that keep trying to separate God from his word. Mm-hmm. They try to say, well, God is this, God is that. Well, but it's they're ignoring the word, and of course people have all kinds of answers to it. Well, Paul wrote that in Romans, or whoever,
Mm-hmm.
and whoever wrote Romans or whatever, and he was talking about, it reminded me of John Tyson, Church in the City, on his series, The Controversial Jesus, and he talked about human sexuality and healthy sexual formation. And here's the bottom line that you cannot escape from Scripture, okay? Healthy sexual formation is between a married man and a woman. Mm-hmm. And when you do anything but that, it's a hard argument to overcome that's what God intends. And generally speaking, I think you get to a point in your life where you realize that there's a reason that God intends things, mm-hmm. and because that's what's healthy. And you know what? For some people, these are things that are lifelong struggles. And it was interesting that Bobby mentioned yesterday, it's easy to talk about, homosexuality, but nobody talks about other sexual things like adultery, for example, and or addictions to pornography or anything else that you might be struggling with. And we sometimes overlook one category of
One's worse
sin.
Than the other. It's all the same.
Yeah.
It's all the same.
Well, and the other point too that he made, and which I just have to say needs to be hammered home. He was very quick and very clear to say, and my words not his, but he was that we're all sinners, and the point of coming together as a church is that we not only honor God, but we seek to encourage each other. And he mentioned the different types of churches, mm-hmm. the courthouse church. I'd never heard this. The courthouse church, the hotel church, the hospital church. Mm-hmm. And he was saying, the courthouse church is all about rules and regulations, and if you don't abide by our rules and regulations, we're going to kick you out. The hotel church is the pendulum swings the other way, mm-hmm. and it's like, we just want you to feel good about yourself
because we'd on your pillow.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable?
We'd rather you be here than
don't
not.
Want to upset you.
So we don't. Yeah, and he said, and the right place is a hospital church. Yeah. We're broken. We're in need of healing, mm-hmm. and we're going to come here and we're going to support each other. And I think that that was just, he is so good with what he does. Now, I got to tell you, pitch one other thing too, and I wish I'd brought it. Have you seen this little book called Draw the Circle by Mark?
Draw the Circle.
Draw the Circle.
Let me look it up.
Look it up. It's a brown book. It's about 40-day. It's a 40-day prayer book. Okay. Draw the Circle. Mark, I want to say Batterson, but I don't know that I've got.
Oh yeah, Mark. I know exactly. Oh yeah. As a matter of fact, Glenn did a big thing on this. We did this. We did a show on this, and I've actually got a video with him.
How long's that book been out?
It's like 2012. Yeah, it's been around.
That book is
40
10 years old.
Oh yeah. I'm quite
I just
familiar.
got turned on to it.
I'm quite familiar with it.
Okay. So I use the Takarta app on my phone.
Okay.
For Bible app. And do you know Takarta? Tecarta. Takarta. So that's just one of the many apps where you can put a Bible on your phone. And so one of the things that Takarta does is you can open it up and you can have a daily devotional.
That's him there.
That's him. Oh, that is
so cool. I did one of my wide awakes, and it was about Glenn, the circle maker, the pill. I don't know what all. Honestly, I have to listen back to it to understand what my content was. But anyway,
so on my one morning devotional was one of the excerpts from this book, and so it was really good. I mean, it was the amazing thing was you can tell when somebody's a good author is. When I laugh and I say most books you can read a quarter of the way through the book. Like you talk about the modern era and business books and self-help books. It's like the first quarter, first third of the book is really the substance of it, and the rest of it's just like they just say the same thing over and over again.
Right.
And which is ironic that would drive me crazy, because that's exactly what I do a lot of times, is I just say the same thing over and over again. But his book, he says what he has to say, and then it's the next chapter. And so the book is not very big, but it's a 40-day prayer challenge. I bought the book, and I've been so impressed with it. And the irony of it is, I was at my office last week, and I was digging around in a banker's box of some stuff that I had moved around, and there's a copy of this book. And I went to Janet and I said, oh, where did I get this book? Who gave me this book? I bought one, and I've got it at home, and Diane and I are reading it together, and it's amazing. It's wonderful. Who brought me this book? Why do I have it in my office? And why did I never notice it before? And so there was a lady, Rebecca Alexander, who was elected out of East Tennessee, and she bought everybody one of those books and left it in their office. And shame on me, I didn't read it then, and no telling how long I'd had it. But anyway, it's a really good book, and I would highly recommend that if people have not read it. And there are so many good things in the book that I don't even know where to start. But I got to tell you, listen to Bobby Davis, and I want to meet this guy. I want to go.
Patterson?
I want to go to
Washington, D.C.
I know.
That's where his church is. And here's a story about how that they're like, we want this place. We're going to pray and walk around it. And they ended up getting it. He's a great guy.
I tell you what, I've acquired more. It was interesting. I remember one time when one of my kids said, we asked him to pray, and one of our kids made the comment about not knowing what to pray for, not knowing how to pray in a certain circumstance. And I thought about that. I thought, you know what? We don't talk a lot about prayer. I mean, with our Church of Christ upbringing, we think, we make sure we pray to God and we say in Jesus' name, amen, right? But we don't talk about talking to Jesus, or we don't talk about letting the Holy Spirit, intercede for us and things like that.
That's what the verse was coming to mind right there.
Yes,
the Spirit intercede, Romans 8:26.
So there's so many things that we didn't really think about. And so I want my kids to read this book just to open their eyes to so much about prayer. So it's a wonderful book, and I don't know, you've obviously met him, but I don't know if you've read the book, but I would highly, highly recommend it.
I think Glenn asked us all to read it if I remember correctly, and I did, but he had him on the show and they talked all about it, and then I did these things called wide awakes. Glenn turned us loose in the studio, and he was like, "Man, do whatever you want to do." And so while I was there, I did this thing, and it was about the apologist work I was doing, about proving God, because that was like my journey at that time. And so I did, I don't know how many little videos called Wide Awakes. And they didn't, nobody really cared, but they meant a lot to me. And it also it gave me just a treasure of my time there, Yeah. And I remember him being there, and we were talking about the book, and then I ended up tying that into the Scopes Monkey trial, and I don't really know how I did.
I don't know
but
how
I'll have to go.
Yeah.
But if you go to LaVernVivio.com, and it will say ministry videos right up here at the top of the page. It'll say ministry videos, and you can click on them, and you'll find all the Wide Awake videos that I did while I was there in the studio. And I'm assuming they all still work.
Where do you find that?
It's at LaVernVivio.com.
Okay.
So if you go up here to the top and just go to the ministry videos, and then there's about I don't know how many. There's the one with with Matt. The circle maker is Mark. Yeah. Okay, Mark Batterson. Okay, I thought it was Matt Batterson, but anyway, it's Batterson. And but I have I don't know, a bunch of them, and the little videos that I did. And so like Glenn, he was great to work for. I just can't say enough about it. But anyway,
that's I'd highly recommend it. Okay, I'm looking. I picked up my phone to look at the clock, and there's one more thing I got to tell you about.
Okay.
And then you may need to take a break.
Yes, I do. Go ahead.
Do you want to do that? Because this will take a moment.
Okay, yes. We'll go ahead and take a break, and we'll talk about Barry and Rebecca Richards with Exit Prime Realty. My friends, if you are looking for some help in the real estate community, and you just, no matter what you're looking for, it could be a business that you're wanting to invest in. Maybe you're looking for a place to start a business. I had a friend that was looking in that direction, said, "Hey, I'm interested in this, and this." And Barry reached out to me over the weekend and said, "Hey, who was that guy? And we've got this property we want them to look at." And we were reconnecting because it was a business type thing that they're looking for. They've taken care of historical business properties, historical homes, anything. Of course, in Robertson County, because they're up in Cross Plains, they're Cross Plainians, been there 28 plus years, but they also buy and sell in the surrounding counties and across the state line in Kentucky. Now, the name change happened a couple of months ago, and the reason why, they're still part of the same exit team, but they started their own new line because Barry is a broker now here in Springfield, has an office on the downtown square. And then Rebecca has the office in White House. She's an agent there. So they combine those two offices to have Exit Prime Realty, which is still part of the Exit Tree. Still great team, just a new name, just a new branch in the tree. And you can reach out to them today. You can call Rebecca at 615-504-7425, 615-504-7425. You can reach out to them at sellwithbecky.com, sellwithbecky.com, or buy.robertsoncounty.com. Barry's expertise in marketing will be something you'll want to bring to the table if you're selling property, to make sure the videography, the photography, and walkthrough tours and all of that is exactly where it needs to be. Check them out today, and remember, they will be one of our sponsors, one of our founding sponsors for the Kilgore Station Bluegrass Festival coming up in May 17th and 18th. You're going to want to be a part of that as well. I will be as well. So when you find them and talk to them, be sure and let them know that U-Turn sent you. Senator Kerry Roberts is in the house, and we talk about everything because we're friends, and so we just go all over the place with all the things we talk about. He interviewed me a little bit there at the front. So thank you so much. So what is it you want to talk about?
So people bring up all the time illegal immigration, and that is quickly bubbling.
Yeah, and I told y'all how to fix that. Remember?
No.
Remember I told you, I said you give a pathway for those who are here.
Oh, yeah.
You give anyway.
Well, the thing, though, that you got to do is you got to stop digging the hole that we're in.
You got to stop.
And so a lot of, there are a handful of things here, but I want to make sure that everybody, we started getting some feedback somewhere, or maybe that's the headphone being turned up really loud or something.
I don't
know. I start I'm hearing myself from someplace else. So
maybe ringing or something.
Maybe they are. Okay, so people bring up illegal immigration all the time, and they, obviously it's like, what can you do about it? Mm-hmm. What can you do about it? Well, immigration is a function of the United States Congress, and so it's really up to them to act. So I want everybody to understand what Bill Hagerty tried to do. Bill Hagerty is our United States Senator, okay? So you got to step back sometimes and say, okay, why are the Democrats just letting people pour across our border? And if you don't think the Democrats are letting people pour across the border, you're just not paying attention. Mm-hmm. They are pouring across the border. And so Bill Hagerty had a bill that struck at the heart of the matter. He had a bill that said you can't count illegal aliens for the purpose of congressional redistricting. Okay, stop and think about that for a moment. What incentive do the Democrats have to let all of these people pour across the border and give them all these benefits and things like that? Well, they are included in the census for congressional redistricting every 10 years. Duh. Mm-hmm. Okay. So let me ask you a question. So where do you think that bill went in the United States Senate, which is controlled by the Democrats?
Nowhere.
Yeah. Nowhere.
Yeah.
Nowhere. Didn't do anything. So people need to wake up and understand that there are a lot of Democrats who are very, very concerned about illegal immigration, and they can't understand what's going on with the Biden White House, and they're upset about it, and they don't want to accuse anybody on their team of doing something nefarious, but that's what it's all about. It's about congressional redistricting and trying to hang on to the majority that they wouldn't otherwise have. Okay, second thing. People need to understand what's going on at the border. You can download an app, and you can come to the border, and you can I'm going to oversimplify, but this is true. You can download an app, you can fill out some information, you can get to the border, and you can get what's called paroled into the United States. That's terminology. You get paroled into the United States. You get paroled into the United States with a little bit of money, with a cell phone so they can track you, and a work permit.
They're going to give you money?
Yeah, they'll give you benefits. I mean, not cash money, but you get benefits.
So here's the thing you don't understand. I've worked extensively with my friends from Egypt, and they get nothing.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
They get zero.
Well, just sit tight, okay?
Zero.
Because this is what happens. Okay. So the thing is, this is what people conflate, and people conflate this and confuse this. If you have a work permit, are you here legally?
If
That's
you
the question.
have a work permit, are you here legally? I would say you should not be able to get a work permit unless you're here legally. I mean.
Well, guess what? You can get a work permit here and be here illegally. Okay. Okay. Let me ask you another question. I'm not trying to embarrass you at all, but can you tell me what DACA stands for?
Or do not.
Okay. So do you know what when people talk about DACA, they're talking about, these kids that got drug across the border and they waded through the Rio Grande River and no fault of their own, and their parents brought them here, and because they're not born here, they're not birthright citizens. They got brought here because of no fault of their own, and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So that's what DACA gets portrayed as. And so when people try to come up with the acronym, it's kind of like dependent adult children, something. It's not. That D stands for deferred. The A stands for action. So what happens when you're DACA, they're basically saying, we ain't going to deport you yet. Okay, so we're going to let you stay here for a little while. So if you have deferred action, does that mean that you're here legally? No, you're illegal. You're illegal, right? Okay. So what they do is stop and think about the contradiction here. On the one hand, the government gives you a permit to work. On the other hand, you're here illegally, and they say we're not going to deport you yet. Okay? So your work permit has to be reapplied for every 2 years, and your deferred action has to be, sought for approval every 2 years. But what happens? People come and they disappear into the system or into America. So what's happening at the border is the Biden administration intentionally is paroling these people into the United States with benefits, with a work authorization, and with deferred action. Okay? They're not legal. They're here illegally, and in many instances, they're receiving more benefits than United States citizens. Okay? All right. So people have had enough. Republicans and Democrats. Now, the Republicans are vocal about it. The Democrats are seething silently about it because they don't want to criticize their president, but it's getting to a point where they don't care anymore, and they're starting to speak up. So I'm starting to hear from, a lot of Democrats that say, can't we do something in Tennessee? Well, as a matter of fact, we can. And one of the things that we do, do you remember a few years ago, I don't think this was Diane Black, but she got blamed for it. They did driver's license for illegals in Tennessee. Very short-lived experiment, okay? Okay, so a couple of years ago, we had a bill that we basically said you could give a DACA recipient an occupational or professional license in Tennessee. Now, nobody's done it yet because the Department of Health and Department of Commerce and Insurance can't figure out how to promulgate rules to make that happen because we don't get to preempt federal law. And there's a section of federal law called 8 U.S.C. 1621, which defines what's a public benefit and all this other kind of stuff. And the bottom line is that there are things that states have done all under the guise of, DACA, all these kids that are here innocently, and we got to look after these kids, and they just want an education, they just want that. I get all that. I get that there are children who got drug across the border to no fault of their own. But you know what? The problem is you're calling a category of people The people that you're talking about are one small subset of it. It's a much larger group of people, and if you look at the research on who that larger group of people is, it's bad guys. Mm-hmm. People with criminal records, people who got let out of jail, who came across the border because they why? Because DACA is not dependent adult children of something. It's deferred action. You could almost say it's deferred action criminals in America. How about that for DACA? Could we just call it that? Because even though there are tragically some of these kids who got brought here to no fault of their own, the problem is you're setting policy on the small group of people while ignoring the larger group of people who were killing people, like that student in Georgia. I mean, if you look at the crime statistics for people who are here illegally, let me just tell you this. Let me tell you, if you take out the gun, knife, whatever violence, and you categorize them, whether they're legal or illegal, it completely undermines a lot of the gun violence statistics that the Democrats throw around. And that's part of the reason why no one's being intellectually honest. You know what we said earlier in the show? Somebody has got to step up and call out the lunacy that's taking place in government today with the things that we're saying that just flat out aren't true or are misleading or are manipulated or are half-truths or partial truths. And the fact of the matter is this. The Biden administration got 1.8 million illegals paroled into America. The point is to put them in places where they can influence congressional representation, all for the sake of one thing, one word. Do you know what the one word is? The one thing, the one word. It begins with P, it ends with R, and it has a W in the middle. Power. Mm-hmm. And that's where we are today. Mm-hmm. It's more about power than it is about policy. Mm-hmm. It's more about power than it is, some of the traditional American values that we have. It's the desire of one group of people, who live in Washington, who like their lives, and they do it at your expense, and they really don't care what you think. They're just doing what it takes to stay in power. The arrogance of Washington politicians, the contempt of Washington politicians for the average American is stunning. And I'm just going to tell you, and this probably just sounds like I'm total homer and total partisan, but I think the arrogance and contempt is far, far, far greater on the Democratic side than it is on the Republican side, but we still have our own. And thankfully, in Tennessee, when we look at our congressional delegation, except for Cohen and Memphis, I think most of them are authentic people, and what you see is what you get. I like our congressional delegation, and I don't know all of them, but the ones I know, I like a great deal, and I think they're there for the right reason. But you know what? Anyone can be corrupted by influence and power. And so, pray for these people that they stay focused, number one, on God. Mm-hmm. And praying for God to reveal His will for them in their lives. That's the antidote to being sucked into all the stuff that goes on in Washington. And so that's another thing that we're working on. We've got some things in Tennessee that we need to undo.
Let me do my last break, and then we'll come back and wrap it up. We could do 2 hours easily. So much going on. Senator Kerry Roberts is in the house. If you have any questions, you can throw them up. We've got a few minutes left, but I do want to go ahead and pause and talk about Highland Rim Speed. Well, let's start Veterans Motorplex. I always mention Highland Rim Speedway because that's how you find them on social media. They kept that page. They had 19,000 followers. They're not going to give that up. So if you go to Highland Rim Speedway, you'll see the big banner comes up, Veterans Motorplex. It's racing time here in Robertson County, and they are getting ready. They've been doing some. their season runs March to October, and sometimes it'll go a little over into November depending on the weather. But they were a little delayed in starting, but he wanted to go ahead and get this out there and start talking about it because they're going to start racing in April. They've been doing some track improvements. All you got to do is go on that social media page for Highland Rim Speedway, and you'll see all the improvements they've been making. They've got, of course, the show you can go tap into that they do weekly. Sometimes they miss as they're getting ready for the season, but getting all geared up. They're going to have that $40 ticket that will get up to 8 people in for $40, up to 6 kids and 2 adults. Great ticket price, great family fun atmosphere. You're not going to find a racetrack where they don't sell beer and alcohol. This one, they don't sell beer and alcohol. It is a family-friendly track. It's not allowed in there. You're going to go, and they've got a great concession stands, burgers, hot dogs, all the things you'd expect. Some of the kids that are working in there, that's their first job. Some of my students from Greenbrier, it's the first job they've ever had is at Veterans Motorplex. Great place, great family fun. 6801 Kelly Willis Road in Greenbrier, getting ready for the races, guys. Going to start back up, Jerry says, first or second weekend in April. We'll get him on and get him to kind of give us a complete update. But if you have questions, just follow them on Highland Rim Speedway, 6801 Kelly Willis Road in Greenbrier for Veterans Motorplex. Get ready to get to the races, and when you talk to Jerry, be sure and let him know that you turned Cincha. Senator Kerry Roberts.
Take your earplugs.
Huh?
Take your earplugs.
Oh yeah,
because it's loud.
It's loud, but it is
it's
so
fun.
much fun.
Yeah, it's
I
fun.
love it. I love going out.
I haven't been out there in a bit and need to get out there again soon sometime. But it's kind of a neat thing. But it's kind of loud. So
in Robertson County, what else you got for us?
Well, just to wrap it up, let me just tell you, I love. I want to thank my constituents for giving me the opportunity to do this. I really enjoy the job, and I know there's we're in a very politically charged environment, and I've probably been more partisan today than I normally would on your show. I mean, because the bottom line is when we talk about Republicans versus Democrats in my district, Robertson, Cheatham, Dixon, Hickman, Humphreys, and part of Montgomery County, the bottom line is we all go to church. We're pretty much all pro-life, and we all believe in the Second Amendment, regardless of the party that we're in. When you get to Nashville, those differences are far more stark. But for many, many years, they weren't that great. Now Nashville is starting to mirror Washington, and in Washington, it tends to be that the extreme of the Democratic Party is what runs the Washington Democrat Party. And by the way, that's part of why, Tennessee turned red, because Tennessee was a Democratic state for many, many years. But you get out in the country and you talk to a farmer and he just say, I can't be part of what they're doing in Washington. Right. And, we still have the holdouts here who are, proud, lifelong Democrats. But when you sit and have an honest, conversation with them about do they agree with what the Democrats in Washington say or do, most of the time they say no. And but they're hopeful that somebody moderate will come along and sort of reform the party. And I don't know if that'll ever happen or not, but who knows? But I think the good thing about Tennessee is we just don't need to let it become like Washington. And we're in danger of that. As Nashville grows and the influence of Nashville grows, Nashville has some, frankly, there's just some crazy people who are creating policy in Nashville. And the sad thing about it is they think they're moderates. When you sit and talk to them, I talked to a state legislator a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about this transgender issue. And she said, well, I'm a moderate, but the problem is you all, meaning the Republicans, you all are transphobic and you're all this other stuff. And I said, you think you're a moderate? And she goes, yeah, I'm a moderate. Well, no. You know what? Maybe in the neighborhood that she lives in, maybe she is, but not in Tennessee or not. I mean, she's one of the outliers, and she doesn't see that. And I like her, and I think she's a wonderful person, but she doesn't see, she looks at sex reassignment surgery as gender affirming care. And my heart breaks that kids are getting pushed into surgery and they're just as unhappy after as they were before. The euphoria on the inside is not there.
You know, it's so funny. We were having a conversation with some folks over the weekend, and we were talking about somebody that had some, and it has nothing to do with gender, but struggles, just life struggles, and had some wild behavior and difficult things and all of this kind of thing. And somebody said something about, well, this is what made the difference. This is the thing that made the difference in their life. And I just looked at them, I said, no, it was Jesus.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Jesus. That's what was the game changer for them.
What's sad is that when you reject liberal ideology, you are, just pretty much routinely called a hater. And I would just say people need to rethink what their definition of compassion is.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
Okay, I got to run. I got an 8 o'clock phone call. And,
it is, and it's 8:02. Love you, brother. Yeah. Thank you, Senator Kerry Roberts, for being here. Thank you guys for letting me come back on the air with you, and thank you, Lee Marie, for filling in for me last week so I could take a break. We're going to have Mayor Billy Vogel in tomorrow. He's coming in. He and Ryan both delayed their visit, I guess because they just liked me, but I love talking to them. But Mayor Billy Vogel will be in the house tomorrow, even though the commissioners meeting was last week. Same thing with Ryan Martin, even though they had the mayor and alderman meeting last week. He's coming in on Wednesday at 7:30. So we got a lot of good stuff coming up. We're going to be talking with Mr. Doris from Doris Millen about Chick Day. He's coming in on Wednesday morning as well at 7. So just a lot going on. We've got Vietnam Vets Day coming up on Friday, on Good Friday this year. I'm going to be able to be a part of the memorial that they're going to be doing at Springfield Memorial Garden. So we'll be talking about that as well. So lots going on this week. Thank you for being a part of what we have going on here at One Street Over. God bless you. Have a great day. This is 1100 WSGI.